Hey guys, it's Roderick. I'm here with another episode review of The Handmaid's Tale, Season 5, Episode 7, No Man's Land. Okay, let's get into it. Before we get into it though, someone made a comment that maybe I've been too harsh on Luke because maybe Luke has been raised by white people. Well, until Luke's white ass parents show up, I'm gonna stay in 10 toes down on what I said. So, but when Dottie and Bill show up, then I will retract everything I said and you'll get your mea culpa then. So I think that's a good comment or a good read. But, again, until Dottie and Bill show up, I'm gonna still say what I said about Luke. And Luke. Luke. Okay, sorry. Now let's get into the episode. So, one of the things that I really can appreciate about The Handmaid's Tale is that it allows me to really calibrate my own personal moral and ethical compass, right? As a Christian, and I move through this world, I always try to make sure I do what is right, what is good, and what's in alignment with, biblical teachings. But one of the great things about being an artist is that you're allowed to, when you're watching art, you're like, oh, it doesn't really matter. So I can really hate these people and I can really wish bad things upon them because it's a fictional piece. But then whenever the feelings do come up, I always have to make sure this is fiction, this is real life. So one of the things I can really appreciate about that's one of the things I can really appreciate about the show, because then I really kind of have to get my own emotional compass in check and say, okay, what's going on here? Why are we feeling about this? It allows me to really kind of maybe deal with some things that maybe I personally did not really think that was on the forefront of my mind or my emotional space. Because one of the things that I'm sure everyone can identify with is that we all have someone in our life at some point in our life who's wronged us, right? Who has not done right by us. And we all have wished for revenge. And one of the things that this episode really does is it really does a very good job of creating conflict between the desire for revenge, the actual result of revenge, and then how that actually lands and how that feels, right? But I'm not really saying that maybe was their intent, but I think that was maybe a byproduct of this episode. The most important thing I think we need to discuss as we kind of move through this episode is, first, did everyone hit pause again? Check out the 5 parts of the episode so you know where you're going. This episode was tracked very well with kind of like the arc of how a series should go because when we got to the 5th act, I knew that something big was going to happen. And I knew just by looking at it to pause it. So always remember, pause the episode, kind of look at the spacing, how long the different acts are, and that kind of give you an idea of like what the pacing of the show is going to be. But the next thing we're going to talk about is choices, right? So in the creation of any art, there are choices that are going to have to be made, right? Empirically, externally and internally, right? The artist, whether it's a singer, a novelist, a dancer, a writer, a director, they're going to make choices, right? And then outside of the art that they create, the marketplace, then there's choices to be made. One of the interesting things when watching this episode was looking at the different choices that were made in this episode and wondering whether it was the marketplace or the endpoint that was driving the choices of the episode, or whether or not these were natural choices. As you go internally into the show, one of the things, and I have not been on social media, I've not looked on Twitter, I have not seen what people have been saying, but I'm sure there are like hundreds, if not hundreds on tweets of questioning June's choices, right? Questioning Serena's choices. And one of the things when you're creating, especially something in the visual arts, and also novels as well, is that you want character choices to be the natural progression of what we've seen in the past. So therefore, when they do something, either it's, oh my God, we saw this coming, or when they do a roundabout or a 180, we know it's about circumstances that they've encountered that makes them do that, right? So one of the things in this episode that I was constantly questioning is why is June doing what she's doing? Why is Serena doing what she's doing? And are these changes going to last? And why were these choices to be made? But without further ado, let's get into it. So we get in our teaser, and June is driving frantically. Where are we going? I don't know why people always ask when someone has a gun to their face, like, where are they going? Like, it really matters. Like, there's a gun to your head. That's the least important question. But anyway, June's like, where are you going? Serena's like, just drive. Now, mind you, Serena is having full-on contractions at this moment, and she accidentally shoots June in the back of the head, like something out of Pulp Fiction, with the gun. So finally, June is like, fuck this, gets out the car, snatches the gun, and she just starts running off, leaving Serena in the car. Serena gets in the front of the car, and she starts driving, and, then the car, like, skids, right? And they can't get the car out the ditch. So at first I was like, well, why don't you just put the car in neutral and start to push the car, right? So that's just what I'm thinking at that point. So then June sees a barn, and they head onto the barn. So that's kind of like our teaser again before the credits. So Act 1 opens, and we get a flashback from June's point of view of somewhere early on June's first posting in Gilead, and she's at a birthing. And it was really jarring and kind of, I don't know, I felt so kind of way seeing June back in the red Handmaid's uniform, especially juxtaposed Serena in the teal. So choices. One of the things that I think I brought up in some previous videos of how they're dressing Serena out, not in the teal. I think that choice is to indicate that this is a different Serena than what we saw in Gilead, if not superficially, maybe internally, right? But I always question, like, why is she not in her teal? Why is she not in her regular, her wifely outfit? And I think that's to create a more humanizing effect for Serena, which I've already covered, which I won't go back into again. Watch the previous videos. I think it's episode 2, when I kind of go in about the humanizing of Serena. So I think that's why they're dressing her in the non-teal, is to kind of humanize her and show a different type of Serena. So anyway, this flashback, they're in the birthing situation, they're in like a birthing, and it really is like this whole kabuki theater, right? So, because you see like the actual handmaiden who's actually having the child huffing and puffing and screaming, and then you see the wife behind kind of pantomiming like she's really going through it. And obviously this is June's first one, and so she's just like, this is some bullshit, and she kind of looks over at Serena, and they share this moment. And at this point in the episode, I was like, the fuck? Like, why the fuck Serena and her fucking looks, right? Yeah, that's a look now. Wait till the fucking bitch starts whopping you beside your head and locking your fucking room, okay? Or puts you in the fucking closet, right? So I was just like, yeah, okay, whatever, flashback. But I think we get to see the effect of the flashback is that we immediately get a cut to as Aunt Julia and Aunt Lydia and the handmaids are all yelling, push, push. We immediately cut to June yelling to Serena, push, push, push. And June is really we see the conflict in June because she's like, this is bullshit. Why am I helping this bitch kind of have her fucking baby, considering I'm in this situation now because I can't find my baby. So we really kind of begin to see the embryo of June's kind of a conflict of helping Serena, helping the baby versus helping herself. So then June starts going on like, oh, don't worry, it may not be that bad. Hannah almost broke my pelvis. And then she kind of sticks to Serena. She's like, and then when I had Nicole, I was alone and by myself. Thanks to you, Serena, right? So then Serena goes back and she's having contractions. And June is really enjoying seeing Serena in this pain. But again, June starts to help. So then we go back to choices again, right? So I'm watching this and I'm like, why the fuck is she helping her? Why does she feel so beholden to try to help her when in the reality of the situation, the average person would not give two shits about Serena fucking having a baby in the barn, okay? Which, by the way, the messianic allegory was not lost on me on Serena having her baby in the barn and Jesus being born in the manger type of situation. So So then June goes to help her. She's like, I need to see if you're crowning. Goes in to kind of touch her hoo-ha with the baby coming out. Serena starts to fight her. She's like, no, you just want to kill my baby. And Serena's like, fuck you, bitch. I'm done. And I leave, right? Which, for most people, we would have been like, okay, then have your baby. Like, I'm going to go fuck with this car. And then whatever happens, happens up between you and your Jesus, right? But no, June goes down, goes and push the car, and the car won't budge. So the question was, so if she had put the car in neutral, and instead of pushing the car from the front out, wouldn't the car have moved if she had pushed the car from the back over the mud thing? I kind of felt like that was just, maybe like it's like Sisyphus and the Rock. Like I was like, don't, instead of you trying to push the car up into the road, just push the car forward in neutral and it just probably would have moved. But once again, there we go. Then we see another flashback of June back at the birthing, right? So June's back at the birthing, and now it looks like the handmaid has died, right? And here comes Aunt Lydia talking about, well, she served her purpose, now let's pray for her. And they take her back behind a partition. And June is just really kind of mortified that everyone's like saying prayers and no one's concerned about this handmaiden at all. And then they're praying and June is looking, we see them kind of do a cesarean, take the baby out, and Aunt Lydia comes right in front of her face. It's like, offer it, which was so weird, because now we're so used to her just by her regular, name June, being called Offred, especially with fucking Aunt Lydia's trifling ass. Like every single Aunt Lydia just irks my fucking nerves anyway. Like, so then she's like, Offred, pray. So she's, starts to pray, and, it's really good to see some of the old handmaids that before June accidentally or unintentionally had them killed, or they got killed fucking around with June. So it's nice seeing like some of the other handmaids, some of the old faces, like Janine before the eye patch, and it was just like, mind you, no Emily, should have recast it, and they just should have, it was just, that was like a really nice moment seeing kind of all the old handmaids' faces. So back to present, June is still trying to dig the car out. So she gets aboard, sets the mud under, makes it level, and then gets the car and the car backs out. Fine, whatever. So now she can't see out the windshield. So she pushes the shot where Serena almost fucking blew her head off. She punches a hole in the fucking windshield, and she's looking down this long road, and June decides to go back and see Serena. But of course, we knew this was going to happen. And then here's the thing. I don't mind predictable plot points, right? It's not necessarily the predictability of the plot points. For me, it's the journey between, right? How we get to these different points. Like I knew very early on that we were going to have a June delivering Serena's baby moment, right? So for me, it was how do we get there, and the quality of that journey, right? For me, it's the journey, not necessarily the destination, because most films or movies are very predictable, but it's the journey that makes them interesting. It's the journey that makes you remember them, that makes them moving. And in this point, I was like, of course she's gonna go back, right? So she goes back, and she's like, that's when we really get this really big scene of Serena huffing and puffing in this barn. And I was like, okay, here goes our biblical allegory, messianic thing. And, Serena gives birth to this healthy baby boy, and you kind of see this kind of maternal sharing between her and June. And I'm like, she's still a bitch. She's still a bitch. She's still a snake with a long ass memory. Is this really going to change your relationship with Serena? This is where I'm at this point, right? Because I was like, you could do all the crying and all the weeping and all the whatever with this baby, but once Serena gets this baby cleaned up and it's okay, she's still gonna be the trifling ass Serena. I was not convinced that at this point we're gonna see some substantial change in Serena, such that she wouldn't be the trifling ass bitch we've seen her throughout the entire show. So then we get another flashback again, and now for real, the handmaid is dead, and we see June looking in at the wives who are all celebrating and all happy, and no one is really thinking about or caring about this handmaiden that's dead. And we have another kind of shared look between Serena and June. And I was like, well, of course they don't care, right? They put on the whole kabuki theater, and this chick is fucking wiping her brow like she fucking really had the baby. So I was like, I don't know what you're thinking, right? So anyway, back to present. Serena tells us she's decided to name her baby Noah. Okay, fine. I guess you can name him Jesus or Jesus. So we'll go with Noah, the savior of humanity, who was born in a barn. Okay, we get it. We get it. So then Serena's like, the baby's born. She's like breastfeeding. And here comes June like rambling on about Hannah in a sentimental moment. And Serena's not even fucking listening to her. And I was like, bitch, why are you talking about Hannah like it really is going to matter? Because she don't care about you or your Hannah or whatever. She just had her baby. So then we have this pivot scene, and Serena turns to her as like, why didn't you kill me at the, why didn't you kill me, at the information center? I knew you had a gun. And a very teary June goes, I didn't want to, right? And then we go into the best dialogue of the show, right? So this is the meat and potatoes of the show. So we go, Serena goes to him and says, do you think he'll be like him? Now, y'all think it's still going to be talking about Fred Waterford. I still think the baby's 2LO, but this probably more than likely means the baby's Fred, but I'm still thinking it may be 2LOs. Anyway, she goes, do you think the baby will be like him? Right? Which again, I'm still thinking this baby's 2LOs, so whatever. And then June goes, it depends on who's raising him. It depends on what you teach him and what you teach him and what you teach him to take as if it's his, right? And Serena goes, well, I want him to have everything. And June's like, we all want them to have everything. Like, bitch, these ain't new ass feelings. People have been having children since the dawn of time. Everybody wants their child to have the best. It doesn't mean you create a whole totalitarian fucking government and put women in sexual servitude just so they can have everything that they have. But needless to say, it was I think it's some of the best of the dialogue in this episode, because we start to see that we're kind of getting to a point where both of the characters are on the same wavelength. We're not almost there yet. We'll get to the point when they are both on the same wavelength, but we're seeing the calibration of Serena's had her baby, and Serena's not stupid, okay? You know how you talk to someone and then you think they're not listening, and they're listening? Serena heard everything she said about Hannah. She just did not want to process it, because what it meant was, you don't have your whole ass baby in a barn, but I'm the trifling bitch that took away somebody else's child and then decided to stunt on international television with that baby? Of course she should have killed you when she fucking had the chance. But whatever. Now, so there we go. June comes back inside. But there's a difference. So because another thing is because there's a difference between marrying a man and raising a man. Right? And there's a saying goes that men are the product by active or inaction of the mothers who raised them, right? And I think Serena's getting that is that her child is going to be a direct result of how she mothers them or whatever. So June goes outside, she comes back in, and Serena and the baby are sleeping. And June's like, we got to get you out of here. And Serena's like, I can't go back. They'll take the baby. And June's like, bitch, who's after you? Like, what? And she finally fesses up that the Wheelers have been treating her like a handmaid. And the way she said it, she's like, they're treating me like I'm you. And I would have been like, oh, not me, because I got a car and I can fucking drive and leave your ass fucking in a fucking barn, okay? But whatever. And Serena's like, and then June's like, as bad as that may be, bitch, you still got to get to a hospital, right? So Serena's like, no, maybe this is what my purpose was in life. Maybe I was just a vessel. And she starts quoting Bible verses about revenge. And then Heike compares her baby to fucking Moses. And I was like, Moses? Really? You named it? I was like, Moses? Red Sea part Moses? With your raggedy ass husband, Fred? No. But anywho, so she's like, maybe, she's like, they'll catch me, they'll take the baby. And then she offers the baby up to June. Like, well, maybe my purpose is to have the baby and that you're my angel and you're the person to come to raise my baby. And I'm thinking to myself, well, that's another stupid idea. June takes the baby. We don't know where they are. June leaves you to die in the barn. June takes the baby. Wheeler catches June. So again, we're all coming up with badass decisions here. The best decision is for you to go to the hospital and then call your shitty spy Tawello and have him come and like do his like whatever magic to make sure you're okay. That's the best plan, right? Like that's our A+ plan. Now we see at the end they came up with a B- plan, but it was, that's our A+ plan, right? Get to the hospital, call Tawello or call Moira, Jiminy Cricket. Her pussy's probably cooled down from fucking all the road runners or whatever. So then, have her call Tawello and then get Serena baby to safety. That's my A+ plan in like situation, right? So then finally June gets fed up. So this is where we see the true conflict. She was like, how dare you call yourself a vessel? Because that's what you used to call us when we were handmaids, vessels, and you didn't care about what happened to us. You didn't care whether or not we lived and whether or not we died, and we are people. So then we get this moment and Serena says, I'm sorry, which I feel like everyone's kind of been waiting for Serena to say you're sorry. But just like in real life, it really kind of fell flat. Not because of the quality of the acting, not because of the quality of the writing, but because once you go through so much with someone and you're at that point, the sorry doesn't mean anything, right? Like I'm with you with fucking afterbirth and shit in a fucking barn. Like your sorry don't mean anything right now because I still ain't got my baby, right? That's why your sorry does not matter, right? And so then she's like, why am I saving you, right? So she answers the $1 million question, right? Which we go back to choices again. Why is June saving Serena? Why is it important for June to save Serena? Is this a choice that's really the natural progression of what we've seen June come through 5 seasons and 6 episodes? I do believe Serena's sorry is a natural progression. Because I think Serena just got a little taste of what being a handmaid was, and she was like, okay, I see why the bitch should have shot me, right? So I do think that we're at that point, but I was still kind of on the fence about why June would help Serena. And she's like, I'm not doing it for you, I'm doing it for him, your baby, right? And because we're not in Gilead and I'm not you. So if you recall back in my first video, we talked about foils, right? About 2 characters and they are pitted to be opposites to show the differences between them and the spaces between them, right? Because what I've been saying is if the roles were reversed, as we know, as we've seen, Serena would not do the same thing for June, right? So this is an opportunity for them to show really the space between the characters. That June, I wouldn't say rode the more high ground, but necessarily pointing out the spaces between them, that I'm just not you. I would never do this to another person, to another mother, or whatever. Whether or not Serena deserves it, June leaves that up to Serena and her Jesus. And, and June says, you're the only voice the baby recognizes. You're the only smell the baby recognizes. You're the only person that baby knows. The baby belongs with you. And then she's like nodding and she grabs her, like, do you understand me? So once again, an excellent use of subtext. She's not really talking about Serena and her baby. She's talking about her baby Hannah and her. And that moment is when both the characters are on the same wavelength and Serena realizes the magnitude effect that she has had by keeping June away from Hannah, right? Because the fact is Serena can barely tolerate being away from her newborn baby. Nevertheless, a baby that you raised for 8 years or 7 years, and now you can't even bear to see it. At that point, I believe that Serena recognized the full magnitude of what she's done as far as keeping June away from Hannah. Now, in creating Gilead and all her other trifling shit, we'll just make that shit a wash. But at that point, both the characters are kind of on the same page. So, June takes the baby. So June takes the baby to the hospital, right? So I was like, is this Canada? Is this not Canada? And then here she goes. She gets the phone. And I was like, oh, she's going to call Tawello. Have the shitty spy come. Make sure Serena's okay. Girl, she calls Moira. Now, what the fuck is Moira gonna do? Okay? The time to have Moira involved in a situation, long since passed. Okay? Jimmy and Moira can't do shit now. Okay? But she calls Moira, because also in the age of cell phones, right? You gotta go to a cell phone number that you remember. Because it's not like, you know, I'm old enough to remember when you had to remember people's phone number or had them like up against like the phone wall when you made phone calls or whatever, or have them written down. Like my mom still has like an address book with people's phone numbers in them, right? So you have to really know people's phone numbers now for you to be able to make phone calls, because if you're in a situation like June, like how many numbers could you remember off the top of your head? You know, besides your own, right? Or like your own home number, whatever. So she calls Moira, and I was like, oh my God, what's going on? Here comes Tuella, whatever. So Serena's in the hospital, and June goes in to see her. Excuse me. And June, and, you know, and Serena's having these like new mother jitters, like, oh, they're giving my baby formula. Oh, they gave me antibiotics. And it was like, bitch, you're gonna be okay. Like, this ain't the caveman times. They want you and your baby to be safe. Like, babies have jaundice. They put you under a light. Like, it's Canada with their good healthcare system, right? So June goes, look at the baby. Serena's edgy. And then at this moment, I was like, we have about 4 to 5 minutes left, right? Fifth act, I was like, oh shit, what's about to happen? I was like waiting for the other shoe to drop, because we know that it's just not going to be this copacetic, right? Because at this moment, June and Serena are like sitting in the hospital bed. All is well. They've come to this kind of, you know, non-verbal agreement, or we'll call it a non-verbal truce, right? And that's what it was. It's like, it's a truce, right? Like, I won't try to kill you. I won't wish death to your baby. I mean, there's nothing more that Serena can really do to June per se, but you know, it's like, I will quit hating you or whatever. So we're kind of at this non-verbal truth, and then you're like, and you're literally holding your breath because you don't know like what's going to happen. So the next scene, June comes out the hospital room. Here's Luke, unscratched, unscathed, okie dokie, change of clothes, all washed up. Hey, Luke. You know, so then he's like, oh yeah, Moira called me, boop, 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 boop. So they're calling, they hug, they catch up. And the way the frame is shot is you get the medium shot kind of from, if you go to this side of the camera, right, of them hugging, right? And then from the back, which is kind of blurred, you see these bodies come walking in from the elevator. I'm like, oh shit, the Wheelers done fucking found her. And so then we see it's a guy in a, like a black suit, a police officer. I was like, oh, the Wheelers done paid off the cops. They about to snatch Serena and her baby. And Luke's like, oh, don't worry, they're not for us. And I was like, what? So then, also Luke tells that he gave the flash drive to Tuella when he's working on it. That'll take us basically to the end of next season, because Tuella's the shittiest spy ever made. Anyway, the police show up, handcuffs Serena to her bed because she's an undocumented immigrant. Because she, as you know, she could only go to all the Gilead-owned spaces, right? Because then she was technically in Gilead. So because she is an undocumented immigrant, she is being detained, and she invokes her right to counsel. And then she's like, they're like, well, you don't really have an immediate right as an undocumented immigrant under Canadian law. Not sure under United States law, that's actually always the correct thing to say or do, but we do know that we have a whole ass called Guantanamo Bay. But that's a digression. Anyway, and Luca's like, no. And she's like, well, what's going on with my baby? She's like, well, we don't have like infant center care detention center. So we gonna have child protective services come, and they're on their way, and they're gonna take your baby. And she just starts screaming and screaming. And she's like, sees June like, June, help me, June, help me. And Luke is like, yeah, bitch, now you know what it is, justice. And now we see June looking, and she's screaming, take my baby, help me, June, don't let this happen. And Serena's screaming, and June is standing there, and just frozen, right? And the episode ends. So, as I was saying in the beginning, that's what creates a conflict, right? Because prior to this episode starting, I was leading the charge of fuck Serena, put her in the jail, she should get everything she deserves, no sympathy, no mercy, right? But now, having gone through this journey, kind of via June, right? I totally understand. I was like, oh man, fuck Luke. Like Luke has not done shit for 5 fucking episodes, and the one time you decide to put on your cape and be a backwards ass captain save a hoe, you done fucked around and made things exponentially worse. Not because we care about Serena's baby getting taken, because we know Serena is a vindictive, petty ass bitch. And once she finds out it was Luke, that little nonverbal truth she had with the afterbirth leaking on her hoo-ha ain't gonna matter shit again, because she's gonna be back on her burn June Osborne to the ground thing. And so I think that's one component of it that June's having. And also it's like, man, I genuinely feel bad, right? Because not only I've experienced it, I now know that you're experiencing it too. And the revenge that we so wanted for Serena to have, it lands a little flat because they have done what I have been resisting them to do the entire season, is humanizing Serena, right? So the revenge feels and lands better if Serena was in her teal, being a bitch to June the entire time, and not being sorry for what she's done, not really, being very entrenched, in Gilead ways. But because they have very steadily and progressively and effectively managed to humanize Serena, right? The revenge and the effect of Serena getting her revenge lands on a conflicted canvas, right? Because I mean, some people are gonna be like, well, fuck Serena, I'm not really conflicted, right? But if you think about the fact of your own life, of regardless, it just always feels differently, because by the time the moment of revenge actually comes, you're usually over it. And it really doesn't matter, in this grand scheme of things. Now, in this case, it still does matter because June and Luke don't have Hannah. So it just, again, it's conflicted. It's not as a joyous, like I was expecting for 5 seasons to be able to throw popcorn in the air, throw confetti, be out my street, cartwheel with no panties on, talking about fuck Serena, ha ha ha. And now I'm like, I didn't want to feel bad, and I do feel bad. Now, I'll be over it tomorrow because that's the type of bitch Serena is. So this is only going to last for we'll say another 15 minutes or so, because I ain't feeling that bad about it. But I think the writers and the director did a really good job of making us feel conflicted about a resolution that we all have been wanting to have and wanting to see for a very long time. So kudos to them. Always let me know what you think. Drop down in the comments. Hit the alert button, like, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you guys next week with another episode of The Handmaid's Tale. Bye.